are listening to Fast Track Podcast, the place to be to fast track your personal finance or fast track your business, or both, through a series of conversations with those who have learned it, done it, and made it. In this episode, I have Philippe Fruchet with me. He's an entrepreneur by profession, explorer by nature. He was born to a Chilean mother and a French father. Since a young age, he has been immersed in multicultural environments, not to mention his global career footprint later on. After resigning from his full-time corporate role, he reinvented himself and started his own company. The rest is history. Now running 2 successful companies, helping businesses with sales digital transformation, Philippe Fruchet has a lot to share. Welcome to Fast Track Podcast, Philippe.
Hey, thank you for having me.
I'm so interested to know your personal story because you founded several companies in the past and you work in so many different emerging countries. I guess your experience is very unique. So let's start with the first question about you. Tell us a little bit about yourself and also your international footprint.
So my name is Philippe. I'm French. I'm currently based in Amsterdam in the Netherlands. And my father is French, but my mother is Chilean. So I grew up in a bit of a multicultural environment. And my dad was an expat working in oil. So when we were young, we also lived in different countries. So like Nigeria, Italy, and Norway. So I guess, at a young age, I sort of got a bit of the multicultural vibe, and I kind of liked it. So when I eventually finished high school, I also went to study abroad. So I studied in Ireland as well, in Dublin. And then, I've been abroad ever since. So really like different cultures, different backgrounds.
And since you were born in a multicultural family, do you think that contributes to your adventurous spirit, or is just part of you as part of your character?
Yeah, I think it helps to get a taste for different cultures. So that's true. Then I think it's also a personality thing. So for example, my brother had the same uprising, but he's much more centered into France. So I think it's nice that the family gives you a view, but then you have to grow and develop an appetite, I think, for it.
And for the audience, you might not know that Philippe and I met several years ago in Amsterdam from our previous job. And I remember like 5-6 years ago, you briefly mentioned about you starting a company. And could you tell us how did you started this journey from being employed to start your own company?
Yeah, always in the back of my mind since I was in business school, I had the idea that it would be nice to at least once in my life try to set up a business on my own. And I didn't know how, I didn't know when. What I did know is that first I wanted to build some experience so that I had understanding of how business works, to be able to have a foundation to create something. And then it didn't start as a very reason idea. It's not that I said, okay, now I have the perfect business plan and let's go and create the company. But it was very much, I would say a spur of the moment. I grew frustrated within the role I was in the corporate world, and decided I had enough. So I couldn't go forward with what I wanted to do. And then I said, well, better to stop and try to figure out what it is that I want to do and where I want to go. So it's maybe not the normal path. I get more people have ideas and they only leave and grow once they've figured out what their idea would look like. For me, I just wanted something different. I didn't know exactly why, and I thought, let's stop with what I'm doing and let's take the time to figure out what it is I want to do. And so then that of course leads to a journey that's not necessarily a straight line into getting the business that will work or be sustainable. So actually, I first started. This company as sort of a base. So it's in the Netherlands, it's very easy to set up a company. You can basically set it up within 4 to 5 days with 400 euros for notary costs and 1 year of capital. So that was very easy. So I first set up the one that was for me. And then I first partnered with an American guy, and we set up a media company. It was called So Damn Creative, bit of a strange name. But then the idea was to make videos, marketing videos for different clients. And this guy had a background in video production. Then I said, okay, let's set up a company. Let's go 50-50 on that business. And then let's try to find some clients. Our first client was the government of Rwanda. They were coming to the Netherlands for like one of their yearly conferences, or not yearly, but every now and again they have like gigantic conferences for all of their expats in Amsterdam. And then we ended up making a production of the video. We had a crew and everything for them, which was very stressful because I had no idea what we were doing. And eventually, yeah, it went quite well. But then subsequently we had another gig, and I realized quite soon on that this partnership was not going to work. So we were just very different people, very different characters, and even if there was potential for the business, there was just no possibility of us continuing to work together. So after maybe I think 2.5 months, I sold my shares to him and said, you can keep the business. That's not the right thing for me, and let's move on. So that was the first fast failure.
From that, what do you think you learned from it in terms of finding the right partner? What do you think is the advice for our audience if they want to start a business with partners?
Yeah, I think some people say that starting a company is like a marriage, and it's even harder than a marriage. I've learned that you need to spend more time thinking about what the different partners in that marriage want. I was a bit naive, and I really jumped into it believing that everything is going to be all right and we'll figure things out as we go. And there were already some signs that maybe we had some issues that we needed to address. I'd say before you jump into it, think about what you're going to get with a partner, how the both are going to contribute to the business together. Are they going to be equal in the contribution continuously? Are they going to be differences? If so, how can you account for it in the structure, in the shares, or in the way of doing things? So yeah, first try wasn't successful, but then I think you learn about spending more time thinking up front about what you want from a partner, and finding the right partner is actually quite difficult. I think much more difficult than I thought, which is actually why now I don't have a partner anymore. So I'm 100% on my own in this business.
And you were in the corporate world. You mentioned that you grew very frustrated about it, but I'm sure also you learned a lot from it because you are part of this corporate talent pool that's supposed to rise up in the corporate ladder. How do you think your learnings from that period compared to being an entrepreneur? What's the main differences?
Yeah. So I definitely learned a lot of stuff. I think before I answer your question, maybe a word about the double-edged sword of the term being a talent. I think that in companies, it's a bit two-sided, the risks from that, because you as a talent expect things to happen. So your expectations are not always correct. And on the other side, then the business expects different things from you. So I think it's a good thing, but it can also be a bad thing. But then, to your question, I learned a lot. I learned most of the things that I'm using now in my consultancy from the business, how to manage projects, how to communicate with different stakeholders, how to navigate discussions to get to an outcome. But I think the really big things for me is one, a passion for the emerging markets. So thanks to that job, basically, I got to work with people from all over, particularly Africa, the African continent, and really open my eyes into a different world, but also into the possibilities that you have in more emerging markets to really make a difference, I think, in what you bring to work. So basic things that you can structure, you can really see relatively fast an impact on what you're doing. And I find that quite nice, because sometimes, particularly in more developed countries, you might be doing a really small things of which the impact is not always very clear. It's less organized, of course, but you have a much bigger opportunity to contribute and to see the results of your contribution. So that's definitely something that I got to experience from the work. And I think also the technology part. So my last role was also as a product owner for one of the solutions of the company, and I really learned how to work with developers, understand better how to think, in particularly with digital, is about rethinking how a process that exists in a certain form can exist in a different way by leveraging what tools are now available that weren't there when those processes were designed. So yeah, a lot of exciting things I got to learn, of course, in the job, and that I'm still using and applying, perfecting sometimes into what we do now.
It's very interesting. You mentioned that what you have learned from the corporate and you can use that in your current entrepreneurial journey. But also before you mentioned that after your first divorce and then you started this company that you fully own yourself. What happened in between? How did you come up with this business idea? How did you started this?
Yeah. So there was also another company in between the two parts of the story. So I made a first media company, and then the second one. Basically, we had an ex-colleague from work who was looking for a service that was similar to what the things we'd done before. It was for Tanzania, and they wanted to do market research, and then they wanted the consulting, but also the application to be able to collect the information. So our company TC Insight basically has an application that allows you to collect data in emerging markets and be able to manage the process. So within that application, you can also manage the quality and eventually connect to reports for insights on whether you're managing the project itself or eventually getting the strategy out of it. And then they were like, okay, well, in 2 months, we want to run this project. Can you come and work with us? I think was the question. And so eventually I was like, okay, well, I have 2 months to build an app that will be able to do that. So I knew the process. I knew exactly what the app needed to do because I'd done that with multiple partners before. But yeah, I didn't know exactly where to go and how to do it. So then I found a developer agency here in Amsterdam. We had worked together on a small project before, and I said, "Okay, guys, do you want to partner up?" And I didn't have sufficient capital at the time to pay for the full value of the application. So then we made a deal. It's I mean, if I go back in time, probably we'll make a different deal now. But we made a deal that they would get shares in the company, but I would still retain a majority shareholding, and then they would pay some of their work through that shareholding. And that's how the company TC Insight was born, which was basically the software part of the consulting. So the consulting was always in the other company, so CSD, and the application in TC Insight. Now, even though I had learned from my previous marriage, the second marriage lasted longer, but unfortunately also ended up in a separation. And yeah, this was from what I mentioned earlier. It's like I hadn't foreseen that there would be an unbalance in the investment of time into the work and the reward that you would get from that work. And eventually that imbalance just created lack of trust or issues. We couldn't really resolve it, I think, in a way that was satisfactory, at least not for me. So then I took on a long process of trying to buy them out. So about 1.5 years ago, then I bought them out, and now, yeah, I basically own these two companies now.
What is the decision to buy them out? Is it because it's the software part of your that business is complementary to each other?
Yeah, so the application, of course, is necessary to run those projects. But yeah, the reason to buy them out was really to have more freedom in how to develop the proposition, not only the technological part, but also what type of service I wanted to offer the clients. Just to make it a bit concrete. So basically the idea was that we have different service. So maybe you just take the app service, maybe you just take the project management, maybe you just take the consulting. And I wanted to be able to offer the full package to say, okay, well, you tell me what you need, and then we'll go and find the partner who will do the field work. We'll manage them, we'll contract them. Basically, we'll do everything for you. And then I didn't feel that with them, in the partnership, I would be able to set that up in the way that I wanted without having a lot of conversation. You know, in a marriage, and when it's your child, you want to be able to discuss how you're going to grow it. Yeah, I just wanted to go and get on and do it. You know, so I was very clear of what I wanted to do. I was very clear on how I wanted to do it, and I saw our relationship as slowing down things and basically having to bring them on board was not really adding value to the process and to the service. So yeah, I thought, well, let's try to find a way to get that out in terms of issue and then move forward with the new way of working.
And how do you find starting your own company, running your own company versus working a full-time job?
I think as you probably know as well, it's a different world. One is it's a lot more work. You become all the departments of a company into one for quite a period of time, and it's more personal. So when you're working for an employer, you can be passionate about what you do, of course, but if things go bad, or if things are not exactly going as planned, it's not dramatic for you personally. It's like it's nothing that, I mean, you can be emotional, but it's not the same as when it's your own company. Then everything becomes more personal, and that's something I didn't anticipate. I think on basically you're every day putting yourself out there, and yeah, so things that go well, of course, are also more rewarding. But when things go sour, then it's more personal. It's harder to deal with, I think. But of course, both of them go hand in hand. Huh? You get more reward, more energy, and when things go well, and yeah, you get more impact on your personal life when things don't go well. I guess probably feeling the same on your side.
Yeah, sometimes I feel I cannot stop working, and I know it's not healthy, because when you go to a job, you finish 9 to 5, you go home, and then the project runs. I mean, there's always a timeline, but for your own stuff, you want to get it done as soon as possible in the best way possible. And basically, if someone has very high standard, it's just going to be difficult.
Yeah, no, I fully agree. Suffer the same issue, and particularly when it's something that you're doing, you do want it to be as good as you can get it, right? So it's not that you're saying, let's just do this. It's sufficient, right? Whereas I think sometimes in the corporate world, it's easier to say, well, this is sufficient for what we have. But sometimes you're like, okay, but this is not good enough, And then next thing you know, you've gone down the rabbit hole, and you've been spending hours on something just to make it perfect. So yeah, I think that finding the balance between work and time off, and what is sufficient, is always something to think about. Or at least to keep in mind and try to balance, I think.
Yeah. Is there a way that's for you to decide, okay, this is good enough, let's move on? How do you balance speed and the quality of the output?
Yeah, so sometimes when you have like timelines, it sort of gets done for you. So you sort of you have to stop at a certain point. Particularly now that we have a bigger team now, I'm trying to look at the investment versus the return, and investment and return can also work for an individual. It's like, if I'm going to spend 10 hours on this versus spending 10 hours on finding a new client, for example, will it be worth it? So more and more now, particularly with a bigger team, you have to think about, okay, well, if that person spends more time there, is it really going to be better for the service that we're giving? Will the client, reward us more for what we've done and invested, in which case the investment is worth it? Or, is it better that we give what we're supposed to deliver? It works, it does it, but let's invest that extra time into something either for the business or for developing the company in a different way. So I guess that's how you have to try to structure it in a way.
Exactly. I want to also ask you something about mistakes that you made in the past in your entrepreneur journey that you might want to share with the audience, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so many, multiple. Every day I make mistakes. Yeah, I think it's a bit of a difficult question, because I think some of the mistakes that you make are actually good in the long run because of the learnings that they bring. So I could say that the first company, for example, was a mistake. It was, but it also, for example, I learned how to make videos. I got some equipment now. I'm using it in some of the stuff that we do. So it brought me a skill that I didn't have. And at the same time, I was better prepared for my second relationship or my second company. I think maybe if I look back, I mean, there's also small mistakes. And so I'm trying to think about the bigger mistakes and the bigger lessons here. Probably for entrepreneurs as well, if they're thinking about it, is I went into the sharing the company, getting partners way too candidly, So I think if you're bringing the idea, if you're bringing the business, you need to make sure that you're not giving too much control, too many shares to the people that are going to help you bring that to life. So yeah, I think that my biggest mistake was to think that I would be able to generate enough business that would not matter, in a way. And the reality is that even if that becomes true, which is not the case yet, but even if that becomes true, you still need to have a balance in the partners that are in the company, in the shares that are in the company. So yeah, if I look at it, how could I have changed that mistake? I think what I'm doing more now of as a consequence is get more outside advice. So whether it is that you have people in your surrounding that know about it, or people that have experience. So sometimes I also seek experience of professionals. You can find consultants and professionals that can advise you. Whatever the costs at the beginning, you're a bit wary of the cost. It's like, yeah, I'm not going to ask for an expert on how I'm going to structure the company because already it's creating costs. I think that investment pays off. So I think if I was to look back at those mistakes, spend more time thinking, getting advice, and knowing a bit better what you're getting yourself into.
Right. I think when people started to have their own companies, it's very exciting. And it's always positive outlook, always very optimistic. And that somehow can hinder the thinking or the planning that what if things goes wrong? What if this happens? How are you going to prevent it? Or how are you going to balance, what you wish for and what's the reality maybe happened later on?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And now you have a company called Creative Strategy.
Yeah,
And
Creative Strategy Digital, yeah.
is it a combination of the one you mentioned before, the software and the consulting, or it's another one?
Yeah, so maybe I can explain in a few words how it all fits in together. But there's the TC Insight company is the market research software, basically. And they're separate entities, but we're now working all together in one company. So in effect, we're one company, but two legal entities. Creative Strategy Digital was basically built around creativity. So we do a little bit of video production, and then of course we use it a lot in everything that we do and deliver. Small part of the business. Then there's the strategy part. So this is the bulk of what we do. So it's the consulting, the project management, making sense out of the data that's being gathered, presenting it in reports. That's really the bulk of what we do. And we have a digital component, which is two-sided. So one of it is, we talked about the TC Insight app, but we also have another application called Smart Sales Automation, which is sort of a light Salesforce automation solution for emerging markets. We've deployed that now in, I think, 10, 11 markets, mostly in Africa and the Middle East. And yeah, basically the company supports all that. So the application management, but the reporting, the project management, and a lot of analytics behind that.
Okay. And then with this company, you travel to different emerging markets. Is it for the job for this company?
Yeah, so that was before the pandemic. Yeah,
before the pandemic. What are the most interesting cultural shocks that you have experienced?
Oof, that's a good one. Yeah, so the markets where we would work would be the Congo DRC, for example, or Tanzania, Ethiopia, countries like this. So the culture shock is quite big because they're very different to where we operate. But I think in a way I was already exposed to that because I'd been to a few of those markets before. I think maybe the most culturally different experience was when I went to Iran. So we had a project with Iran that was just before the sanctions. So the US sanction that Donald Trump didn't want to agree to the deal. And I was actually on that day. I was there. And it was very eye-opening. So you, particularly for a country like Iran, you have an image in your mind which is very much dictated by the information, the news that you see, and how things are portrayed. The Ayatollah, I saw it as a very sort of religious, a little bit backwards, but not very modern society. And then I arrived at Tehran, and I'm like, holy. This is like a super modern city, like and with the super modern and very European in their way of being people. So arriving there and working with those guys, it was like it's not a culture shock, but it was like quite a discovery. So I'm saying, well, so much of your perception is based on so little. When you see it, then you understand a bit, So yeah, that was I think one of the nicest recent discoveries.
Yeah. Unfortunately, our perceptions are so much being influenced by the media. And then if you have never been to the country, see it with your own eyes, and then people form certain kind of idea about this country or people, the culture. So yeah, travel more definitely helps to open your mind.
Yeah, no, for sure. Or research a bit more.
Yeah.
If some people, particularly you mentioned the media, if people say something, maybe there's a complete other side to that reality. So always balance the view, I guess.
So my last question is, what is your future plan for your company?
Staying alive. I think we've talked a bit about now. It's been we're almost going to celebrate 6 years as a business this year, and the key word for me is becoming more sustainable. You built well, particularly in my case, it was a lot on my own or with partners or with external parties to grow. Now we have a team, so we are. With 7 people now, of which some of them are in Amsterdam, others are in Africa. I really want to be able to grow it sustainably. So it means having sufficient clients, sufficient work and business coming through to sustain the increased cost base, of course, of the company, and trying to be less of critical element in delivering of the project. So try to go from doing a bit of everything to getting the team to be able to deliver more of it on their own, so that we can eventually also scale. So I mean, scale is a big word, but at least in the short term, to be able to be more self-sufficient and autonomous as a company, and develop the team into driving more of that, so that then I can focus on growing new ideas or spending time getting a new business, for example. Because I think the market research part, which we call a trade census, we're pretty good at it now. The processes are kind of quite well refined now, but I think there's so much more we can do with the sales automation part. So I really want to grow that part, and then for that, yeah, you need to, of course, invest in finding the right clients that will help you grow that proposition. So I think there's a lot of things that can be done with technology to improve sales. And I think that's really the space where I want to go and spend more time, even maybe experimenting with our own sort of sales team, so that we can really be able to have a direct entry into sales without necessarily always having an intermediary into it. And then from that, experiment a bit more on how you can, basically do more with the technology than you can, or rethink certain ways of selling, or rethinking how we approach our relationship with customers, for example.
Yeah, it's quite impressive, because a lot of small business do not survive after 2, 3, 4, 5 years, and and then with this second or third business that you have, it's already the 6th year. Really, congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. We're survivors. I think anybody who's survived COVID knows that they're out there for the long run.
Right. Okay. I don't have other questions. I think it's a very great pleasure for me to have you here. Do you have any last message to our audience who might think about starting their own business or might be in the process of running their business? Any advice you would give it to them?
Yeah, I think if there's a part of you that feels a certain urge or a little voice in your head that's telling you, there's something else out there. I think the fact is that there probably is, and it doesn't need to be starting a company. It can be finding a different job that's more fulfilling. Yeah, I think that we get a lot of mental barriers, and people around us also. I mean, having that mentality of wanting to start something is not evident for a lot of people, because you're taking a risk, So like, why take a risk? Why take a big paycheck? Why just not follow the safe path? And we're quite flexible. I think what I've learned is that you can do much more than you think you can. It's like particularly if you're in a certain job within the corporate world, you're sent to think in silos. You're within that function. You're within that.
You're within that box that the roles assigned to you.
Exactly. And even if there's another part that you're like, oh, I like that. It's like, no. This is for these guys. You stay in that box. I think there's something quite fulfilling in freeing yourself from that box. I mean, of course, it comes with more uncertainty. And I think that's an important component to say, if you're going to start something, think about what you can live without, So plan for a long period of time where you won't have revenue. Make sure that you're able to live with that you're able to accept that situation. So I had my partner, for example, she could make sure that we could put food on the table. But that uncertainty is an inherent part of what you're doing. But you may find out, even if you fail. So I was telling myself, even if tomorrow this all goes to shit, and I will still have that learning, and that in itself is worth it. That in itself is valuable. Just that the journey, the learnings that you'll take along the way. So, yeah, I'd say if there's an urge, really think about it and ask yourself, why not?
I really like that message. Thank you so much, Philippe, for being here today with our audience. Thank you for sharing your personal experiences.
Thank you. Very happy to be here. Hope that will help some people along the way.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of Fast Track Podcast. Show me your support by liking this episode and sharing it with your friends. Join the Facebook group at Fast Track Podcast 1, or you can find us on Instagram, YouTube, and of course the homepage fasttrack.life. See you in the next episode.